I saw this review floating around by Forbes called Netflix's Castlevania Nocturne again proves the uselessness of user reviews, which is hilarious coming from this person because after having read the article, it seems as though this person is basically calling for the censorship of people's opinions while also allowing to post his own. It's not just a matter of him saying, I don't agree with their opinion, it's him literally having an issue with review sites not putting barriers in place to block people from sharing their ire or their concerns about certain things simply because he doesn't agree with it. So I actually wanted to talk about this because this is something I've seen before and I think it's very harmful because this only ever happens when people express why they don't like something. When everyone is praising it, nobody has an issue with it, nobody calls for anyone to be censored. When people are sharing review sites of positive reviews for a show, nobody really cares. At most, they'll make fun of people for liking something that they don't like, but nobody's calling for anyone to be censored until people have an issue with something. And the problem is, there are some people who have issues with the show that might have very weird or nonsensical takes on why they don't like it, at least to other people. I think if someone doesn't like something for a certain reason, they're at full liberty to not like it, and they should also be at full liberty to say why they don't like it. But what's also important to remember is that everybody doesn't feel exactly the same way about the same thing. What this person doesn't like about the show might not match up with what another person doesn't like about the show. Somebody might not like the pacing or the characters, somebody might not like the writing, someone might not like the running time or length of the show.
I don't like it.
There are different factors here, and this person in this review seems to lump all of those people into the same box and just call them names and as a blanket statement, which I think is very derogatory and harmful. So let's go over this and try to understand this person who clearly seems to be bending over backward to sniff their own ass and to kiss the ass of the creators of the show. So it starts off by saying, I was perplexed by the 52% audience score, which is a little bit above average. His 50 basically is average. And he says, literally half of the 100% of the critics, rotten as it were. I wondered what was going on here, and it's another one of these. Have watched nearly all the series now. I cannot agree with the bad writing, bad characters complaints at all that you see in the user reviews, but instead a lot of focus is put on what else? Its prevalence of black characters and other characters of color, altering a few origin stories to make that work. There's a through line of oppression and horrors of slavery in the plot, and outside of that, focus on gay characters as well. Multiple reviews call the franchise ruined and are upset that the freed slave Annette had the most screen time. My favorite is multiple reviews that call it Wokelvania, the most contorted inclusion of the word woke I've ever seen. The show constantly beats you over the head with current day talking points, another review says. It's a good show, I don't know what else to say. The worst thing that you can say about it is that it might not be as good as the original series, but that is an incredibly high bar, so it's no real surprise. I cannot tell you how exhausted I am of user reviews for projects like this. This keeps happening over and over, where some established IP includes some characters of color or different orientations and the knives are out. I understand this person might feel upset, but there are a lot of people that are probably also annoyed at positive reviews that seem to be shilling for a program that greatly strays away from the source material, especially when you consider that they are using the name of an established franchise with established fans, with established characters, and then changing those characters to shoehorn in tokenization. This person also doesn't take into account that a lot of the people who are leaving reviews about this, whether it be because of the race swapping or the bad writing or characters, are also black people, Hispanic people, etc. It's almost as though the person automatically thinks bad reviews equals white heterosexual male, which is very awkward because there are a lot of females I know, black females, Asian females, who don't particularly like it and think it sucks, who don't like it altogether as a franchise, don't know anything about it, or they've watched the first show and they're like, this one's kind of boring, don't really like it, don't like the fact that they changed one of the characters. I don't know anything about the lore, like I know basically nothing about Castlevania. So for me going in and watching the show, I was like, oh, okay. Even though I was a little annoyed because I'd like to see a little bit more of Richter, and that's something I'll get into a little bit later. Why people have an issue with that, and why I also have an issue with that, even though I do enjoy the show. Granted, it's not as good as the first one, I will give them that, but I understand where the fans are coming from. And this person seems to lack all empathy for people who have grown up with this franchise that apparently goes way, way back. There are also black men that are also saying the same thing, so now you're being dismissive of their reviews as well, and calling them racist? Like, I don't really understand how that works. But anyway, Continuing on to this article, he says, Rotten Tomatoes has a particular problem with this. They crack down on these reviews when it comes to movies, given that there's a system in place to prove you watch a film before reviewing it. This was instituted after mass review bombing of Captain Marvel due to offhand comments Brie Larson made about the male-dominated critic industry, which is absolutely true. And that same crowd has been hounding her ever since. Well, to shed some light on that for people who don't know, she went out of her way to basically insult a whole demographic.
It's an issue that's been bubbling since, like, really the whole time, but this issue has a solution that each one of us in this room can participate in. So earlier this week, USC Annenberg's Inclusive Initiative released findings that 67% of the top critics reviewing the 100 highest grossing movies in 2017 were white males. Less than a quarter were white women, and less than 10% were unrepresented men. Only 2.5% of those top critics were women of color. So you're probably thinking right now, like, wow, that super doesn't represent the country that I live in, and that's because that's true.
What?
What the fuck is she talking about?
This is a huge disconnect from the US population breakdown of 30% white men, 30% white women, 20% men of color, and 20% women of color.
When someone approaches you and they say, oh, you're a person of color, don't you feel a strong innate desire to spit in their face?
Changed.
I dated a white person.
And what happened?
He called me a colored person, not person of color, colored person.
But the people are retarded.
Is she on something?
Am I saying that I hate white dudes? No, I'm not.
Yeah, you kind of are.
But what I am saying is that if you make a movie that is a love letter to women of color, there is an insanely low chance a woman of color will have the chance to see your movie and review your movie.
Excuse me?
And I'm also saying I don't hate white dudes. I'm just saying we need to be conscious of our bias. They are not allowed enough chances to read public discourse on these films by the people that these films were made for.
And she's a racist.
I do not need a 40-year-old white dude to tell me what didn't work for him about A Wrinkle in Time. It wasn't made for him. I want to know what that film meant to women of color, to biracial women, to teen women of color.
You have got to be kidding me.
Had she said the same thing about any other ethnic group, people would have had knives out, even more so. But now people are praising her because it's apparently okay for that particular demographic to be insulted. I don't know why, but it's all right if you do it to that demographic. So of course, other people who are not about that life, all shades of colors of people, both sexes came out and were like, look, she's an asshole. She doesn't speak for all of us women. Or the guys came out and they were like, yo, bro, that's not cool. You can't say that a show wasn't made for someone, but then call them racist when they don't watch it because it wasn't made for them. Like, that's weird. Now, granted, you should be allowed to say your piece and your opinion. And if you don't like an actress and it ruins the show for you, then you should be allowed to say that too. Because the thing is, if a movie is really good, no amount of review bombing is going to change that. If a movie can stand well on its own, people can separate the art from the artist. The problem is when the artists flow into the art, or they put all of their stuff into the art, or if you're marketing for a movie and you make it about that, and then the movie showcases the same thing that you're marketing, then people are going to be turned off by it, and people have a right to be turned off by it. What Rotten Tomatoes has done also is they have combated this by, I guess, hiring people to cut and paste hundreds of reviews that say exactly the same thing. I swear to God, if you probably go there now on the Captain Marvel Rotten Tomatoes review, you will see, if you look back far enough, hundreds of reviews from different people that have the exact same text praising the movie, and it sounds as though they hired someone from Fiverr to basically positive review bomb this. And I remember I left a review saying nothing about Brie Larson, but just about the pacing and why I didn't relate to the character, because it just felt as though she didn't really have any real growth. It was kind of boring. It was an okay movie. It wasn't like great, but it was okay. Would I pay to go see it again? No, but it was fine. And I listed a little bit of issues that I had, but overall it was okay. And I also mentioned the part about Samuel Jackson with the cat and blah, blah, blah. That was deleted. And I had proved that I watched the movie. So that's a whole load of lies. And the critics also do this thing, and some of the critics I've heard in podcasts, they've even admitted to this, where they will lie about how good a movie is, and they won't enjoy it, but they'll say it's good so that they can get access to the others ahead of time for their reviews.
I'd rather have no friends than people who are fake.
A lot of it is so freaking corrupt. And this person seems to be looking at it from just one side of the aisle because of their projections. As an actress, if you come out and say that a huge portion of your audience that is responsible for making you money, that you have a problem with them or you insult them, you cannot get upset when they insult you back. Her tone was also very condescending and patronizing to black women as well, because she basically implied through her privilege that she wants to see what women of color have to say. I want to see more women of color here. I'm pretty sure that black women know that they have the ability to do this. They don't need you as a white woman to come and command them to be in a line of work that they didn't choose. So that came off very condescending, and there were a lot of black women that were like, who the hell are you talking to? Maybe she didn't mean for it to come across that way, but that is the way it came across. And her also saying that they're not given enough chances to see things. What does she think, they're living in caves? Like, that's so freaking rude. It's totally giving rich white woman who has never actually met a black person, or who actually has the mindset that she's superior to them. It was very condescending, and it kind of backfired on her. So people thought of it as her virtue signaling, because maybe she was trying to make up for the whole incident with the Indian movie that she did, but people didn't like her for it. And people are allowed to say they don't like when you say something that insults a whole group of people and patronizes the other and treats them like children. So let's not pretend that it was just people coming out and attacking her. Like, we know what it was. People think that we can't go back on the internet and find the history of things, like they just disappear, even though that does happen. It is still there. People's reviews are still there. You can still see screenshots of all the reviews. You can look, you can research this. People forget, but the internet remembers. Now the person goes on to saying in their article, the problem is that TV reviews have no such barrier in place. People cannot watch the show, watch 2 episodes, or just hear about it from others and start spamming those 1 stars. While many people actually just say the quiet part out loud, it's too woke. Others code it with the bad writing, bad characters claim, the writing of course being the woke parts mainly, the characters being those of color usually. So now this person is completely dismissing people who are saying, leaving probably legitimate reviews saying, look, the writing is kind of off, there's a reason why. Even this person admitted that this show was not as good as the first one. So then by those people concentrating on things that have nothing to do with race, or maybe it's the character Annette, and they could have written her better because they wrote her as a black woman or a Caribbean woman more so, but then they write her as insufferable in some parts and very haughty, and there are legitimate concerns of people, women who are black or who are Caribbean, and they're looking at this and they're like, why are you writing the characters to be so stupid or annoying? It makes us look bad. That's not the kind of representation that we want. So now you're basically dismissing their reviews and saying that, well, you're just coding it. It seems like a lot of projection here. And I think that this whole review that this person has done seems to be coming from some kind of personal angle. And they're just seeing things that are probably not there. I will admit too, there are situations where people overuse the word woke and they will see things that are not there. So when you have a legitimate show or movie that just happens to have a gay character or a character that is from another ethnicity, those people will say it's woke. And maybe they're jaded because a lot of shows and movies nowadays tokenize characters who are minorities. And it just automatically makes people feel as though anytime you see that, the white heterosexual man's gonna be bad and the black characters are gonna be automatically good. It's like black characters or Asian characters cannot be villains anymore, even if they're badass. It's just weird. So I understand where people are coming from, where they automatically see this and they're like, oh, it's probably one of these, which they're not too far off because it's usually what happens. The person finishes by saying, I'm just tired of this. I think user reviews can be interesting when we see splits from critics that are not rooted in racism or sexism. I think they can be useful in, say, gaming, somewhere like Steam, where you must own the game and users can push back against meaningful problems with the game, though it's still a flawed system. But Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic have got to get a handle on this. Oh, Rotten Tomatoes already does. They censor people left and right, so I don't know what you're talking about. Metacritic, however, is a little bit more honest. but you don't like that because you don't want anyone spewing any negative reviews about anything. I know there's a side that says it's critic reviews that are useless, but user reviews, these systems have never been worse. Okay, so let's delve into this. I don't want to just outright dismiss everything this person is saying because you know what? As a person, your opinions, you're allowed to have them, and I'm pretty sure that there are some aspects of this person's opinion that are valid as well. However, this kind of article and what this person is saying is dismissive of legitimate concerns. The author of this whole article dismisses the concerns of audience members who basically have expressed their dissatisfaction with the series.
Well, I'm not satisfied.
But instead of addressing the concerns in a constructive manner, for the entirety of the article, he's just brushing them aside as baseless complaints. And this kind of dismissive attitude alienates viewers who actually have genuine criticisms. The people who have something to say, as soon as this person starts to see bad writing, bad characters, this person seems to just dismiss them as, oh, they're probably one of those people who just think it's woke and they're racist and sexist. That's not cool. You're not looking at the actual issue. What is it about the first Castlevania that was also very diverse, by the way, that worked for people, but this one didn't? You have to pick all of that apart instead of just brushing people off and blanket statementing everyone as just this one thing that you see them as because you're personally upset about it. That's basically divisive, and you're basically telling people who have an issue with the series that they're all the same and they're all evil and they're driven by this negative agenda. Phrases like another one of these and the knives come out and Wokovania, that's divisive, and they create this kind of us versus them mentality. He's also downplaying the importance of representation by suggesting that the primary concern of the negative reviews is the presence of characters that are not white and different orientations. This is basically ignoring the broader context of why representation matters, and it reduces the concerns of those who actually might be concerned about wanting better representation and not just being tokenized, not just having a character changed because it's like, see, Caribbean people, we did something for you, let's just take a white character and just dash you in the freaking stone instead of making a new character, which you could. You have the ability to do that if you're changing that much about it. It's completely understandable to add a new character, which they do. So I understand from that side of things also why actual people who can relate to the character based on her background would have an issue with it and being represented better rather than just having some random character just skin color change and let's just change the whole story, because you're also forgetting that a lot of people who were Black, Asian, and other liked these characters before they came on screen. You have fans that are not just white men, you have fans that are women, you have fans that are Asian women, Black women, Hispanic women, who are probably fans of the original and they wanted to see these actual characters come to light. Now, I personally don't mind because maybe it's because I'm not a fan of the original. I didn't know anything about it, and this is my first introduction to it. I do know about the Belmonts now through the first Castlevania, so I've come to understand the importance of the Belmont in the series, but I understand from people's perspective why they would have an issue with a character like Annette being changed. And this person writing the article labeling people who have these concerns of having one singular monolith agenda, such as being against characters of color or different orientations, it oversimplifies a complex issue. Critics may have a range of concerns, including issues related to character development, storytelling, and overall character quality, and we've seen those types of reviews. But this person is so tinfoil hat that whenever they do see legitimate reviews that are talking about the writing and how it can be better, they automatically think that person must be racist, and they're only pretending to leave this kind of review to hide their racism. And it's like, dude, you just said in the article that these people are not having legitimate concerns because they're just calling it woke because there's
Black people?
But then when the people talk about the writing and actual issues that could be made better, you say that they're racist anyway and it's because they don't like
Black folks.
You done lost your damn mind.
I don't get that. That's really odd and very disingenuous. He points out the reviews that discuss LGBT issues, but then downplays the concerns raised in those reviews. While it's true that some people do make light of these issues, the main complaint that people are having is that media entertainment tends to tokenize or shoehorning gay characters as simply a prop. I mean, let's be honest. Look what they did with the two gay characters in the story. They have one whose main personality is that he can sing really well, and he's super nice, and he gets to stay in a prison and then help everybody else find themselves. And the next one, who was supposed to be a very powerful villain, is just used as someone who is now in the background, afraid of a more powerful vampire, and screwing somebody else and falling in love with that person, and upset because that person is trying to get themselves killed. This is a complaint I've heard from many concerning Olrox, and they could have done so much more with him. They even started out with him as a very powerful character, and then near the end, now granted this was just season 1, but they just kind of tossed him to the side as some kind of love interest to another character, and I've heard gay people on various platforms saying that they had an issue with it. I personally don't, but I can understand why they did. Again, you would have gay characters, and nobody really has an issue with those, but if gay people that are watching were fans of the original, they realize that you're tokenizing their representation, they have a right to say why they don't like that. You can't just read one line of their review and then make up your mind that this person must be homophobic. You don't know if that person's gay or not. Also, all of this is a great failure to engage with the critiques. Like, rather than engaging with the specific critiques or the concerns that are expressed by viewers, this person just generalizes everyone and labels everyone as this one thing. Constructive engagement with criticism leads to a better understanding and improvement in future products. If you want to silence everyone for having these concerns instead of taking the opportunity in this article that's going to be around for a long time to maybe explain to them why you like it or why what they say doesn't make sense and actually having a discussion, you just dismiss them, which is no better than the people who dismiss everything as woke simply because they don't like it or agree with it. So you were basically the complete opposite side of the coin of the people that you were criticizing. Now, the person also mentioned the screen time with Annette and Richter Belmont. So from what I know, it seems as though with Castlevania, the Belmonts are the main characters. Now, you do have other main characters as well, but the centerpiece main character are the Belmonts, which is akin to what Iron Man would be. This person expressing his frustration over audiences disliking Annette having most of the screen time in the series probably doesn't fully understand or consider some of these very key aspects. So in the Castlevania franchise, Richter Belmont is apparently a well-established character, and he is basically considered the main protagonist in certain games, as far as I know. So fans of the franchise had a specific expectation that the show would closely follow Richter's story, as it did in the first Castlevania show. So when a beloved character like the Mandalorian takes a backseat in their own series, it can kind of be disappointing to fans who were excited to see their favorite character take the spotlight. And I've noticed they've been doing this a lot. And every time, like I've mentioned this in other videos, but I can predict, and it sounds stupid and people might not like me saying this, but I gotta be honest. I can predict if a person is going to be a villain, if they're not going to be a main character, or if they're going to die off instantly, if they're white and a straight male.
Did you just say that?
I'm sorry, but that is what, you know how in the old movies and horror movies they had this racist trope where the black man would die first? It is always a black man in a horror movie that would be killed off first, or second, so they don't appear racist. And it's like, dude, stop. You got a black person. See, we had a black person in our movie just so we could kill him off in the first thing so you could see, because everyone wants to see the black man dying. Now, they've gotten better with that, but just as racist and inappropriate as it was back then, it is just as racist and inappropriate for them to do that with white straight male characters. If the character's gay, you're like, okay, he's fine. Cool. He's not gonna die. But I immediately know if it's a white guy with blue eyes and he's the whitest person ever, he's not gonna last very long. He's gonna take a backseat to the female character or a character who's not white, or he's gonna be evil. It's always one of those things. And it's happened in the Gen V show, even though I can kind of excuse that because the main character is a black woman. But it's happened in every modern show I could think of, even in shows like Silo, when you're not expecting it, you're like, oh, they're actually gonna make the white guy a good guy? No, it turns out he's a piece of shit, or he's not totally good, or he was evil all along. And it's like, what the hell is wrong with you? And the black villain that they had, because I know, spoilers for Silo, but this is an example that I'm using. The black woman who was like, oh my god, thank god, now they have, representation of a badass black woman that can be a villain. I want to see that shit. Turns out, no, she's actually a victim, and it was the white man that was evil all along. And it's like, oh God, come on. Like, it is so predictable at this point that it's nauseating. Like, the overcorrection of this is getting so annoying. And people can recognize that, and that's why they call it woke, because even black women are like, dude, black men are like, can we be villains? Like, some of the best people in movies and shows are freaking villains. I want to see a badass villain. Like, that's just how people roll. They want to see heroes. They want to see villains. You can't have everyone just be a villain of a demographic group, and you can't just be them all be a hero. The white guy can't always be a hero, and the black guy always a villain. That's what they did back in the day, and it was very annoying and racist.
That's racist.
But then if you turn it around the opposite direction and that's all you do, that's still racist. Like, I don't understand how people don't get that concept. And I understand why people are having an issue with that. 'Cause it's like, if you're making the show and you know the main protagonist is a Belmont, why can't you have it like the first Castlevania where they share the screen time equally and they're both badasses and they work as a team? I don't understand what is so hard about that. And by them like propping up the female characters and saying, look how awesome, like Richter can't even hold his own against his fights. The females always have to save him. Aren't they badass? Like, no, it's not relatable in that way. And it's honestly very condescending, especially as me as a woman, because I'm like, okay, so now you have to nerf the guys for us to look good. It kind of feels like when I'm playing games, and this used to happen, and that's why I don't like using my mic in certain MMOs, because the minute people find out that I'm a girl, they're like, oh, well, you want some help? And I'm like, I understand where they're coming from, and that's not their fault, because men do have this very wonderful thing about them where they have an instinct to protect women. I get it. But in a gaming setting, I don't want to be treated like that. I want to be griefed. I want to feel like I have something to lose. I want to feel danger. I want to have the same level of enjoyment and danger and risk as guys do in the game. So I usually just keep my mouth closed and people treat me exactly the same. And I find that the experience is much better that way because now they give me everything. I cannot be a good gamer or have my skills increase if people are going easy on me. That is more of an insult. Oh, I'm a woman, so you have to go easy on me. In a game setting, knives should be out, as this person puts it. And I think that's how people feel also. That's how I feel. Like, I don't want people representing my country to be some kind of annoying, overly powered person who requires the main character who's supposed to be one of the most powerful characters to be nerfed. That makes me look bad. That makes me feel more insulted than if you were not to add in my ethnicity at all. Like that, I don't know why they don't grasp that, but it sounds like, I'm sorry, it sounds like somebody who is white and never been around people of other ethnicities are trying so hard to bend over backwards that they come off as being racist. I know it's not them trying to do that, but that's how it comes off. You know, it's kind of like those friends that are like going out with you, a white person and you're Asian, and they go out with you and this person is like, oh, well, we have this rice here, and the white person, you're genuinely interested, oh, what kind of rice do you have? And the white person, your white friend is like, oh, is it because she's freaking Korean that you're asking her about rice? And we're like, what in the world? Why did you go there? Nobody else was thinking that shit. Like, you know, so it makes you come off as racist. I don't know. But anyway, back to the issue concerning Richter. I was actually pleased near the end when they had to do that anime power awakening thing so he didn't feel so freaking useless. And I just wish we could have seen more development around his character. At the very least, the season felt kind of rushed, like they didn't know if they were going to get renewed. So to me, as a Belmont, it felt as though their backstory or the development of the characters were kind of superficial, and I think the shared screen time kind of balanced out near to the end of the season. While representation of diverse characters is important, it's valuable, I do agree that representation can be good, it should ideally be done in a way that doesn't diminish the significance of the existing characters and protagonists or their stories. Like, you shouldn't have to cut down Richter's screen time or his powers or his strength to prop up these characters. In the first Castlevania show, again, as I've said, both male and female leads shared screen time and importance, demonstrating that a balanced approach can be successful, and it was because people loved the first Castlevania. It was very popular. The person writing the article even admits this. It's also important to consider how character development is handled in the series. If Annette's character receives a significant screen time and is well developed, this enhances the storytelling. But if her prominence comes at the expense of Richter's character development or story arc, it's gonna make a lot of people pissed off that were expecting a different focus. Like, you brought in Richter to bring in people, but now you're not really focusing on him. He's kind of taking a backseat. And I've kind of noticed it because I noticed when they're having whole conversations, and Richter is just there as eye candy. He's just there as, I know what you're going through. I went through that too. And then he's quiet for most of the time. Now, granted, due to his trauma, he may be a little bit more introverted, so he doesn't talk much, and I understand that. But there's a way to do that without making the character feel like he's just there in the background. I'm very relieved that in the later portion of the show, they rectify this, they wrap up the story, and we get to understand why he was like that in the first place.
Oh, thank God.
But this whole trope of males taking a backseat in their own series, it really needs to stop. And that's what they did with The Mandalorian. It was so freaking annoying. Adapting a beloved video game franchise to a TV series requires this delicate dance between staying faithful to the source material and introducing new elements or characters. And fans have really strong attachments to the original characters, and I completely understand why. There was a whole storyline and lore, so it makes it kind of challenging to introduce significant changes without causing some degree of backlash, so I understand that. But then what doesn't help is people writing articles like this getting upset at fans for being concerned or upset that they got a bait and switch or that they have deviated so far from the source material when you were using the franchise name and claiming it's based on the source material to bring those very fans in to help prop up and hype this show. Ultimately, opinions about how characters and screen time are handled in the series are subjective. What one person views as an improvement or as a refreshing change, someone else might see as a deviation from what they loved about the source material. But you cannot attack people on a whole that have those concerns, just like this person may have concerns. You're writing about the show. I think people should steer away from insulting the fans. It's something that I've noticed. And people only started going after the critics because the critics were going after the fans. That's why there's a mismatch there. You can say, oh, I don't know what the critics are talking about. But one thing I do not do, and you'll notice I don't do this in my videos, and people even come in the comment section and attack me personally. Like, I personally hurt them. But you will notice that at not any time that I can remember anyway, please correct me if I'm wrong, did I ever go out my way and insult people, like maliciously insult people who like or dislike something. Say, I don't know what the fuck is wrong with you people. You people are crazy that you like this or that you don't like this. No, I usually, in my own words, express why I don't like something. And I usually express that I completely understand people who do and who don't. I never go after people and attack them for liking something. I might tease. Once in a while, I might tease them a little bit, and you'll know that it's in jest. But even that, I rarely do. Because I understand that I may like something and you might not like something. And if we're going to talk about the movie, we're going to talk about the movie. I shouldn't have to personally attack you over a fucking show or a movie. It's not that deep to go after people themselves. You can go after the show and you can make fun of the show and poke fun at it and pick it apart. But for people who are just up in their fucking feelings about me not liking a show, it's fucking weird. And it's no different than the person who wrote this article who seems so freaking in their feelings that they just attack a whole sect of people without even understanding that this is not a monolith of people that are having these concerns or expressing them. They're different people from different backgrounds, from different ethnicities. And this person clearly believes through their projection and their feelies that apparently there's only one demographic that believes this, and it's white, straight man. That is it. And we know that's why they're talking about that. We know it, because that is the only demographic that seems to be picked on when it comes to this stuff. And that is disingenuous, and that is prejudice. I don't agree with that at all, and that doesn't help things, and that definitely doesn't do well or bode well for the success of a show. It's very divisive, and people might say me talking about it is divisive, but I'm not pitting people against each other. I'm basically saying, look, if you don't like it, or you like it, great, fantastic. Don't punch down on people who don't. Don't highlight them either. It's weird. And definitely, I do not agree with them trying to censor because they don't agree with these people trying to put things in place to censor the opinions of others. If a movie or a show is good, it's gonna be good. If these people were really that racist and sexist, why were the reviews for the first Castlevania so good? Why was that not review bombed as they put it? it doesn't, every negative review, when a show doesn't do well or people are not resonating with a show and it's getting negative reviews, that doesn't always mean it's being review bombed. Jesus Christ, you'd think that people would have the common sense to understand this, but apparently, as people say nowadays, common sense is not so common. Anyway, what do you guys think about this? I understand some of the concerns this person may have, but their message was kind of lost on me when they started attacking groups of people and calling for them to be censored. I think there's a better way to do that. And when you censor people, you now close down conversation, which makes people hate things more and then boycott them, and then they lose money anyway. But maybe I'm wrong. Let's have a discussion. Thanks so much for watching. This has been Alteori. You ask, we answer.